Hey, it's Dan Moralez, and this is Home Buyer Radio. And so far here into 2017, we've been talking about buying a house, kind of like Home Buyer Radio. Go figure, right? Anyways, back with me again this week. We just can't seem to get rid of her, but she keeps coming back for more abuse and torture, and I'm grateful for that, is Rebecca Perkins from At Home Realty.
Thanks for inviting me back, Dan.
Thank you for coming back. Okay, so this week, a lot of times we talk about, things, for people who are looking to buy a house. It's kind of, a podcast aimed towards home buyers specifically. But, oftentimes home buyers are also home sellers, meaning that they have a house to sell before buying that next house. And, if you look back over 2016, we had this really phenomenal real estate market, just a ton of sales and bidding wars and kind of all this crazy stuff that happened, during 2016. One of the things that, I saw a kind of disturbing trend of, and I talked about this and even shot some video about it, is I saw an increased number of people who thought that they could sell their house on their own. Kind of a for sale by owner, strategy, thinking, well, gosh, I can just do this on my own. I don't really need a professional. I'll just maybe try to cut the realtor out of the transaction. What are some of the things that, you see? I know you talk to folks who have tried to sell their house on their own and it didn't always work out so well. What are some of the kind of pitfalls for somebody who's maybe looking to sell their house on their own that, things they don't, they didn't think about?
That's a good question, because there are definitely a lot of people that do consider doing for sale by owner. And the reason why? Because they think that they can save money. That's the number one reason why they would do it. But I think what they don't necessarily realize is, are they really saving money? I've had a couple of people that were for sale by owner, and then after a couple of weeks, they just give up and they need a professional to step in. And they end up selling it either, once they list it for more than they thought. If they're selling it on their own, sometimes they end up selling it for less than they could have sold it, because they just don't understand the market. And they can say they can do their own research, but they're using a professional realtor who has the experience, who is in and out of these homes in their neighborhood, in their area. There's no better resource than a realtor.
Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And you just said something, and I'm going to go off the track here for a second. An experienced realtor. I run into this a lot. It seems like, with the real estate market being crazy hot in 2016, there's a lot of people that got into real estate and, maybe dabbled in real estate part-time and so on. And, you really hit a key point there, an experienced realtor, because an experienced realtor like yourself, who's been selling homes for a long time, knows the market, is a full-time experienced realtor that actually knows what they're doing, is really what you need to be able to price a house right. I had a conversation with a client the other day where they had somebody give them a price on a condo, and they had given them a range of anywhere from $280,000 to $320,000.
It's a big gap.
Yeah, I'm like, an experienced agent like yourself can get much more specific as to, where that property should sell and good stuff like that. And I think I just wanted to talk about the fact that, you really need to have somebody who's experienced, not somebody who, my cousin's, stepbrother's cousin, decided to sell real estate part-time when he's not working, doing something else. So that's one of the things I want to talk about is, you do have to have somebody who's experienced, and I think the other thing is, when it comes to these types of transactions, there's things that a homeowner just doesn't know they don't know. Whether it's the documentation that's involved with a transaction and stuff like that, because, you guys do a lot more than just, put the house in the MLS. There's, talk about some of those things you do.
Yes, we do. Yeah, actually, we do. There are a lot of things in listing your home that, like you said, you may not be aware of because you just don't know what you don't know. A realtor that does it full time, like you said, is somebody that's going to be honest with you and give you honest feedback on both pricing your home appropriately, depending on what the market is, as well as preparing your home, because once it hits the MLS and you know that people are searching online, that's just how people search these days. So the way your home looks online is right out of the gate. It's just extremely important. And I think when you're doing for sale by owner, you may not necessarily realize that. Are your pictures that you're using professional, nice wide angle photos, or do they look like you took them at 10 o'clock at night and you can barely see what's going on? Or is there a cat sitting on the couch in the photo? Those sorts of things.
I think there's a lot of that stuff that people, they do take for granted. The professional photos, that's actually something I didn't even think about. But, if you get these homeowners that, maybe I'll take these photos and try to slap it up on a website. It really, it's the marketing of your house, that you guys really excel at, the expertise of being able to market it, the exposure that you have by being able to put that, out there on, not only multiple websites, but the MLS and just the widest kind of number of potential people to look at the property. And then there's the whole other side of it, which is negotiating with, the people who are interested in buying a house and, the stuff that goes into that. Maybe talk about that, because I feel like if I was going to sell my house for sale by owner and I had to negotiate directly with the buyer of the property, it might be a little awkward.
Yes, exactly. It is really difficult when the buyers and sellers meet, that they don't become emotionally involved. So then you're not on your A game when you're negotiating, because maybe you really liked them or you felt bad about a situation they had or something like that. And then maybe you end up getting less for your home because you just couldn't be as strong negotiating as you mentally thought you could going into it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because oftentimes I think people just totally forget about that stuff. I can list it for sale on my own, and you don't even think about those little things of having to negotiate the property, or how do I market it, or how does it look best on the website to potential buyers and stuff like that. And then of course the piece I see a lot as a lender is the paperwork piece. Who's going to write up the contract? Who's gonna write up the contract in a way that is typical for the marketplace? Maybe talk a little bit about what you guys do there, because I think, there's the negotiating piece, but there's also the piece of how do all those things come together in a legally binding form,
Mm-hmm. And using a realtor, you will be completely covered with the legal contracts and such, as well as doing a seller's disclosure. I do see a lot of for sale by owners never even do a seller's disclosure, which can totally come back on them, on both the seller and, it's again a buyer not using a buyer's agent, that they might miss that detail, and that can be a very big detail. So I think
that's something, I think you're right. You see that a lot where there's no seller's disclosure, and so you have a buyer of a property buying a house, and the seller may be aware of flaws or things that are wrong with the property that were never disclosed. And if I remember correctly, I think that's required by law, isn't it? That you're supposed to have that?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So you have sellers who are going to sell their house without fulfilling the requirements of the law. And again, I think it's a case where you don't know what you don't know. And if you were to try to go down this process on your own, and you overlook different details that end up becoming a problem, and you get sued by a buyer, did you really save any money? Right?
You learned your lesson, if anything.
Yeah, if there's one thing I learned in life, there are some lessons I don't want to learn, especially twice, right? So I think it's one of those things where oftentimes people think they can save money. They really don't know what they don't know. How are you going to figure market value? Are you going to go look on Zillow? Because I feel like 90% of the time, what Zillow says a house is worth is wrong.
Yeah. And in this area, it's actually 70% correct.
Wow.
30% incorrect. That's a huge gap.
Yeah. Especially if you're one of the 30%, right? So,
right.
I think, and so I think it goes back to experienced agent, who knows what they're doing, that can come through a property. Because I know, in clients that you and I have worked with together, you go through, you tour the house, you oftentimes will give people suggestions on really just little things that they can do that would, maybe increase their potential of selling faster, but even for top dollar.
Yes. And I do have to say, again, using an agent that would be honest with you, if they're not honest, that's not benefiting them or benefiting you. And sometimes the way you live in a house is not the way you should show and sell your house. Those are two usually different things.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So, at the end of the day, you get the benefit of somebody who knows what they're doing, versus trying to do this thing on your own. You hopefully end up, selling your house for more because it actually got priced right by good, competent agent that knows what they're doing. And you get just the guidance and direction on how to market the property, professional photos. I think that's something that a lot of times people they don't think about either is, there's obviously your expertise as a realtor, but there's also the other services that you work with, whether it's, title, or appraisers or home inspectors, or people who have different areas of expertise that really matter too, because I feel like in those areas too there's people who don't know what they're doing or are maybe lacking in competency. So good agents like yourself who have done this a long time have those resources already out there and can make those connections, and that's really just an added benefit to working with somebody like you.
I completely agree. And you bring up a great point about working with other affiliates that might be associated with the project, with buying a home. And that is definitely where you've come in. How many times have you saved me in doing transactions where the buyer went to the wrong bank, the wrong lender, they didn't know what they were doing, and it definitely makes a huge difference to have a lender that knows what they're doing and maybe creative and qualifies them in an appropriate way. And you're just a lifesaver in that way for sure.
Well, thank you. I feel like we've done a number of those over the years,
Yes, we have.
but we've always made a great team. And I feel like, one of the reasons why we work well together is, we honestly care about what happens to our clients, and we both know what we're doing. Rebecca's an expert at real estate. I know enough to be dangerous. That's why, she's been the guest on the podcast for, probably the last month here, is because this is her area of expertise, and she's phenomenal at it. And that's one of the reasons why I like to refer you as an agent, because I know that if the client gets to you, they're going to be taken care of, and that, they're in good hands. So if you're thinking about buying or selling a house, Rebecca is an awesome realtor to work with. If you're thinking you're going to try to sell your house on your own, I would suggest that you don't do that. I don't think that's a good idea. So maybe, we've gotten you to change your mind and you need an awesome realtor to work with. So if that's me as a home seller, how do I reach you?
Rebecca Perkins, and I'm with At Home Realty in Holland. My cell is 616-218-6161. Again, 616-218-6161. Or feel free to visit my website, RebeccaPerkinsHomes.com. That's REBECCA, Perkins, PERKINS, Homes, HOMES.com.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for joining me again this week. My name is Dan Moralez with Northpointe Bank. My NMLS number is 709729, and Northpointe Bank is an equal housing lender.